Hello, this is Nicola, curator of In the Flesh exhibition. I'm back outside Dock Street Studios in Dundee for the second in a series of conversations with artists. Today I'm meeting Lewis Deeney. I discovered Lewis's work last summer through online art gallery New Blood Art. 2020 is the year of the cancelled degree show, and New Blood Art responded to this by creating a dedicated art graduate space on their website, giving hundreds of early career artists from across the UK the opportunity to share and sell their work. Lewis was one of these invited graduates, and his work totally stood out for me. Imagine my surprise when I found out he was about to start the same MFA that brought me up to Scotland. His work achieves a delicate balance between technology and philosophy, with interests such as yoga and meditation coming through. Really excited to meet Lewis properly, so I'm going to go ahead and enter the gallery. Hi Lewis, thanks for meeting me.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to start in front of this painting clockwise, and it's a series of different sized circles, really quite an intricate painting. Since graduating you've won multiple awards, doing really well, but what I quite respect about what you're doing is you're pushing your work forward all the time. Tell me about how you would begin to make a piece of work like this.
Oh yes, so I see my work as two different elements coming together. So you've got the idea of you've got the abstraction, which is the physical, the realness of the painting, and I like to combine that with the digital. So you combine the physical with the digital. So the composition is laser cut, and then that's laser cut out of the original painting. So the original composition is done digitally, I said, and then the digital is then projected upon the physical, and then the shapes are then rearranged to finish the final piece.
Wow. So do you start with different boards of colour, or do you kind of plan that ahead? Because it's almost like a jigsaw of different colours.
Yeah. The way the colours interact with each other, that's almost like an emergent property from the two different processes. So like how I've got control over the painting, I've got control over the composition, but how it all works together, that becomes something within itself through the creative process. And then you've got the creative license of being able to work back into things. So this might work beneficial if I paint back into it further. Like this one here, for example, you can see the green colour, that was painted back into it after the painting was already finished.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but then that's when you're putting together, and that's aesthetic decisions you can then make about the painting once you're in the process of piecing it all together.
It's gorgeous, and they look great online, but in real life you can really see, I don't know if you're using a palette knife, there's a real texture to the paint. How are you getting that?
Oh, it's a variety of different things to play with. The painting process is, for me, is very intuitive. It's almost like a state of play, and you can really get engrossed in it. You can get into a state of flow with the painting, and texture is a very important part for me. Texture and colour, they're the two main focuses. Recently I've been painting a lot with a squeegee, so I've been painting a lot of that, and I like to just mix a lot of various things in to get different textures and colours, and I work a lot with varnish, pigments, all sorts of stuff you can work into the painting.
Perfect. Okay, so your work can be both figurative and abstract. At the moment you seem to be moving in a direction where your paintings are a little bit more representational. We've got figures, almost faces. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but there's something a little bit Picasso-ish about these two paintings. They're called Artificial Dimensions 1 and 2, is that right?
Yes.
Part of a series of, is it 3 of them? Or?
There's 4 of these paintings in total.
Yes. So perhaps you could speak a bit about why you're moving towards more representational paintings and what sort of things driving that? Yes.
So this is a recent development, which when I first started on the master's course, this was the trajectory that I first went on. And it was the best way I think to describe it is my work in the past was very spiritual. It was almost that I was trying to respond to my unconscious experience, and I was trying to really understand myself in the process. So I was directing my attention inwards in responding to consciousness itself for the inspiration of my work. So the work was very non-objective, and that was the point of it. I didn't want to represent anything from the natural world. I wanted to represent that which can't be represented, and that's why it was all very geometric, and I really like the combination of the geometry and the abstraction and combining them two together. And I was working a lot with the mandala, which is a very sacred symbol and has been used as a a tool for meditation for centuries, and that's the way I would then use it. But I found it very interesting using technology to then create that.
Yeah.
It seemed quite contrasting in a way, because it's a sacred symbol, yet you're using a laser cutter and digital technology to then create it. Whereas I've really started to embrace that fact. Artists have always used the latest technology available to us. And then we've created
even with
with
paint technology and everything.
And it's like the limitations of it, and it's like you get things like oil paint was a new technology the first time, and then you get, Andy Warhol, the screen prints and so that as well. So artists always push the boundaries with new technology, and that's what I seen myself doing with the laser cutter. But then again, I was very interested in how technology is then changing our understanding of ourselves, because the rise of technology exponentially, it's coming more and more into everyday life. So when I went into the master's course, I was really reflecting on the use of technology and how technology is in every part of our life. And I noticed that during the pandemic, when I went home and I didn't have access to the studio, I didn't have access to laser cutter, I didn't have access to anything I had previously. So it was how
is
do
the laser cutters all at the university? And
the one I had access to. Right. But when I went home, and you couldn't even leave the house at first at lockdown. It was you couldn't go anywhere. So it was like how reliant an art process was on technology. But then how much every aspect of our life is reliant on technology. Yeah. How much of what we do, how much of what most people do in their day to day cannot be done without technology. So I was really reflecting on that fact, and I almost turned the attention I'd cultivated looking inwards from artistic practice, I'd put that back out onto the world, and what I could see was the digital, and what I could see was humanity, and how the digital was then interacting with us, because it's interesting to see what digital technology is, because humanity, we've always manipulated the world around us for our own advantage, and that can be from harnessing fire, like one of the first tools we ever started using, up until the present day just now. Whereas digital technology, we're not manipulating the world around us, we've created a new world within itself. So the digital technology is a new world, it's an artificial dimension we've created, and that's where the name of these paintings came from. Because digital is an artificial dimension, it's an entirely new world, it's not a manipulation of this world, it's a new world. And what does that mean for us as humanity? Like, who do we think we are in a world which is digital?
So it's almost like a portal that you enter through, maybe through meditation, but you don't need to, you just kind of log on and then you can become a different version of yourself. Or
yes, and you can get engrossed in it, so your consciousness can be lost in the digital, whereas your physical body can be in the material world, the physical reality, whereas like your awareness and your attention is in the digital, more of you is in there than which is outside of it. So it's a very strange, we co-inhabit the digital and the physical simultaneously, and then especially when it comes to things like social media and all this, we've got a digital persona, we then project upon it, and we've got all these different variations of ourselves, and that's why I like having multiple variations of the same image.
Yes.
And I found it very interesting because the digital creates an element of multiplicity. So when you've got a digital image, it can be replicated multiple times, and with the laser cutter I can cut the same composition out of multiple paintings. Whereas the painted surface creates an individuality, it creates a uniqueness. So nothing can be replicated in the natural world exactly, because it can't be, because for something to get replicated, it's already happened before, so nothing can be an exact replication, it can always be an addition on top of it. And that's what the physical painting brings to the paintings. Whereas I said digital, that's what creates the multiplicity of them. So I could create 10, 100, the digital could just keep on replicating them. Whereas there's always going to be unique, because the physical painting is always going to be different.
And it is, and you don't attempt to make them similar. Like we've got one that's intensely, I don't know if you'd call that orange or red, but it's somewhere in between. With pink, almost looks like marble, as the sort of the face and the body. And then you've got a black one with splashes of yellow and pink, and they are quite similar compositions, but they're entirely different in the atmosphere they communicate, the effect they have. I think overall you do that with colour, really, don't you?
Yes. And I love to see that. I love exploring, again, working very intuitively with the colour, and once you put it all together, it's like, what does this painting then say? It's not like I've said, I want this figure here to portray a certain emotion. It's like, I'm working very intuitively with it, and what does it say once I've finished it? So it's almost like reflecting on what I've created once I've created it, because when I'm in that state of flow and you're in that state of creation, you're not thinking about the finished project, you're thinking about the process, and you're thinking about, you're thinking about the process of creating, you're not thinking about the finished outcome.
Yeah, and I suppose the fact that you've sort of already planned the cutout element of the paintings means you're almost just sort of painting an abstract piece, because the shape doesn't matter. You're not trying to create an image as you're painting, you're just creating kind of, I don't know, communicating your feelings or your emotions or...
Yes, I love the combination of working on the composition separately from the texture and the colour, because when you're working on the texture and the colour, you can get completely lost in it. You don't need to worry about the composition, because the composition's got to be logical for it to work, because if it's not correct, then you're not going to be able to put the painting back together. So it's got to have an element of logic to it, whereas I like in the painting process that the logic isn't there anymore. It's you're working off of complete intuition, and you're getting engrossed with the paint. You're just playing with the paint. You're getting engrossed in the texture, the colour of it, and I'm very interested by that. Inspired by the abstract expressionists, and it's so when the original painting is an abstract expressionist painting, that's where I get my inspiration from. Whereas when it gets to the stage of like, what more can abstract expressionists do, is when you get to the stage it's like abstraction for the sake of abstraction, and it's like complete abstraction. And because I'm very interested in the journey of painting towards abstraction. So when things first started getting abstract, so all of Kandinsky and all the way up through to the abstract expressionists, whereas my then response to that is to then cut up the painting. Yeah,
which is incredible. And you're almost giving yourself boundaries to create more freedom as an abstract expressionist, because often people who work in that abstract expressive way now, because we've got that amazing history, they have a certain look to them, and you can't get away from that. So by adding this element of laser cutout, that's totally rejuvenating that medium, which is amazing.
That was my addition on top of it as well.
I love that. And do you ever, you mentioned that you create the compositions digitally, do you use a pencil and a sketchbook, or do you doodle, do you draw these ideas, or do you just kind of, do they come straight from your head into the computer?
A combination of both. To say, like, I don't keep that much of a sketchbook. I like having like a notebook. I can note down ideas and wee quick drawings and stuff like that, but most of my process is just the creative process. So like, I'll get an idea for a composition, I'll maybe sketch it out quickly, but then take it onto the computer, and then you work at it more. But I would rather make a painting out of the idea instead of working too much on the composition or working too much on the painting. I like working just directly with the painting in the studio, because I think sometimes, for me anyway, I can overthink an idea. So when I'm overthinking an idea, I could have just made a painting and then responded to that painting and responded to it. So instead of doing 10 different drawings and trying to get it right, I would just do it I would just laser cut it, I would just create it and then reflect on what it is and then improve it for the next painting. So each painting's a progression onto the next painting. It's a continual evolution. So it's like you finish one painting, it's like, what's the next one? And as I go, what's the next one again? And I tend to work on multiple paintings simultaneously, because they all work in different stages, and they're all at like different stages of the process at different times. So in my studio there just tends to be like lots of different paintings going on at the one time. Like some are getting glued down, there's all these pieces over here, and it's a lot going on at the one time.
It's exciting. I've seen a picture of your studio and it looks amazing. And what I found interesting, I first saw your work online, and this is the first time that I've seen it in the flesh, which is kind of appropriate for the exhibition when you dropped it off. And I was expecting them to be quite heavy and sort of robust, and they're very heavy. They're 2 layers of wood, and one with the cutout and one as the backing. And they're quite fragile as well. Is that something that you sort of encourage? They're very delicately painted, which I don't know, I didn't expect, to be honest.
Well, that's an interesting element of, you notice the delicacy in them, and it's because when I'm painting, I tend to be very rough with them when I'm painting. There's a lot of like painting on and scratching the painting back off, and so the original painted surface, sometimes it goes through quite a hard time. But I know what I mean, there is an element of fragility to it once it's all put together, and it is, especially the edges and stuff like that. There is it's delicate when it's put all together. You need to be very careful with it, and that does kind of worry me at times when you're arranging all the painting. It's like you don't want to kind of bash the edge or anything like that.
But I think that actually makes them very special, and they add so much atmosphere to the room as well. I think because of that, because you obviously really care about them, and really, really gorgeous. So you mentioned you're sort of starting to go into this figurative element. So we've got these two, the artificial dimensions ones that are quite clearly people, and then you've got another series that are a little bit more abstract. They're just a series of shapes that kind of suggest a face but perhaps aren't. Should we have a little look at them?
These were one of the first images that I really started making when I started to go more figurative. And what I liked about these was starting with a series of shapes, very simple shapes, such as a circle, a square, a triangle, and how can I arrange these in a certain position to then create a face. Because I'm very inspired by Malevich, and I really love non-objective art, and the way that he places different shapes within the canvas.
Yep.
I was very interested if I could arrange them in such a way where it looks like a face, but if it was arranged in a slightly different way, you wouldn't see it at all.
You wouldn't.
So with these ones as well, it's just kind of like, how little information can you put onto it? Can you just have one circle for an eye in such a place where it looks like a face? And so that's what I was really trying to capture with these paintings.
And they're still open enough that if you didn't want it to be a face, it wouldn't have to be at all. How many of these are there in their different forms?
I think there's 8 in total. 8? Yeah. So I've got 4 of this composition, and then there's a landscape one over there as well. So there's another 4 of them. But I think that's a series I'm going to continue on. I'm going to continue making more of them. And because I really like that simple composition. And I think the replication of them, I think just adds to the series of work. So I think, there will be more of these to come.
And the title copied, multiplied, digitised, and they're numbered, so that's kind of appropriate as well. That's really cool. Do you have a lot of fun with your titles? You seem to. They're great titles, really wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I do. Sometimes you get to the stage like, what am I going to title these? And but it's often that I do really enjoy writing. I do enjoy writing very philosophically. So a lot of time it's going back through my writing and taking out certain sections of it and trying to, that maybe sounds good or this sounds good, or there's a few words which sound well together, and I can then look through the paintings and kind of match them up and what ones I feel like are relevant.
And what you were thinking about at the time.
Yeah.
And that's a good place to ask whether the ideas come before the paintings, or is it sort of something that just coexists?
I would say it coexists as well. I think a lot of the time the meaning I speak about in the paintings comes after it, more so when I'm on reflection about what I've actually made, because when as I said, I try not to think about it too much when I'm actually making it, and then I said reflect on what I've made, but I also find like what I'm reading at the time, the painting process and just the creative process more generally speaking is the best time to really try and understand them ideas and really try and contemplate them. And it's, for me, painting is one of the times when I can think most clearest. Like I can meditate for an hour in the morning or paint for half an hour, and the clarity of mind I get from the painting process is more so than the meditation process in the morning.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because painting just it just connects with me, and it just really resonates with me, and it is a very meditative process when I am painting. So it's a time to really digest ideas and work through ideas, and most of my good ideas actually come from painting, and the creative process really generates ideas. It's almost like I'm reading in the morning and I'm like exploring all these different ideas. It's very interesting, but as you're reading a book, it's somebody else's ideas and you bring your own variation to them. But especially when I'm in the afternoon and I'm painting, and you really start to digest the ideas and you really start to understand them in your own way.
And you say reading, so is that reading philosophy, or is that literature, or is that sort of technology magazines? It could be with you, I don't know.
A lot of the time it's philosophy. But as it's quite varied as well. I do really enjoy reading, but most of the time it's philosophy books.
The MFA that you're studying is art and humanities, so that allows you to study philosophy with the master's level students. Are you taking that option, or are you?
Yes. I've just done 2 philosophy modules, so it was very interesting doing them coinciding with the creative practice, because it really makes you. really makes you think about the theory side a lot more than you would previously, because there is a lot of weighting towards the theory side of things, more so than I'd ever done in the past. So it has been a real challenge that way. But I think conceptually it's really pushed my work forward.
Great. And what sort of artist were you before you started using a laser cutter? Like, I'm really intrigued. I'd love to know if you were painting or were you a sculptor. You could have really come into it from any angle.
Yeah, well, it was painting.
Yeah,
it was painting. I've always just been drawn to paint. It's the one which seems to be most natural for me. It's always been, drawn towards abstraction. It's just, I love abstraction and I've always been drawn to it. But one thing I found very interesting I was really interested in abstract expressionism and painting and colour and texture and all these, but there's also this element of me, and I really like geometry, and I'd always try to find different ways to combine them.
Which seems like the opposites, don't they?
Yeah. And that's how I was kind of in this paradox of like, nothing I was quite trying was working.
Right.
And then when initially, the laser cutter was a perfect way to combine the two of them. And then once that combined them, it's almost like it kind of shouldn't have worked, but it did work, and it was...
Yeah, it really shouldn't.
But it did start, the idea of cutting them up was just in the studio one time, and I've done a painting, and I was like, I like it, but it just wasn't enough for me. I was like, yes, I like the colours, yes, I like the texture, and I did like the composition in it, but I said it wasn't enough for me, so I was just that way. I was like, maybe an element, I was like, what am I going to do with this? And took it down to the wood workshop and just started putting it through the bandsaw and cut it into all these different strips.
Freehand shapes or...
Yeah. Well, I had the guard on as well, so I could get them relatively straight.
Yeah.
And then just started rearranging them all together and like, how can I put these together? So then I put them all together and I glued them down. I thought, I quite like that. So it's like, well, I can put it into squares. So then I put it into squares. And then I thought, well, maybe I could put it into triangles. And I wasn't allowed to use a machine which you could put into triangles. So the technician ended up cutting loads of these triangles for me. I was putting all them together, but again, you're very limited when it comes to what you can do with a bandsaw when it comes to the shapes, and especially when I wasn't trained how to cut wood and stuff like that. Whereas the precision the laser cutter can create is phenomenal. It's like far better than I could ever dream to do, and so when I first made that switch onto that, it completely changed what I was working on.
So you kind of came to the laser cutter as a solution for what you're trying to do by hand.
Yeah.
I love it. That's so interesting. And do you think that's something that you're going to continue to use, or can you see another path at all?
Oh, I can see many paths on the horizon, like ideas which I'm going to explore. But at the moment, I'm just very engrossed in the process, and I love the creative process I've developed, and there's so much potential within it as well. It's an avenue that I just want to continue to keep on exploring. I think it'll always be a part of my practice. But then again, I still want to push myself creatively and still want to challenge myself. So I will move away from it and move into other things, but I think it will always be a cornerstone of my practice.
Okay, so we're now standing in front of two paintings, Towards a Better World 1 and 2, and they're kind of mirrored versions of each other. We've got one with a sort of a pink upper third and a green lower 2/3, and the other one has a green upper third and then a pink lower 2/3. And they're very, very expressive with lots of layers of colour. We've got purples, oranges, blues, greens, all sorts of colours. What's behind these paintings?
Yes, so the actual composition you can see in these was taken from a graph from cryptocurrency.
Right.
And that was inspiration for these works. So it was, when I was exploring the digital landscape that humanity has created, like one of the latest innovations of that is blockchain technology. And that is the underlying technology underneath cryptocurrency, such as Bitcoin. That is the first and the most prominent cryptocurrency. But now there's such a vast cryptocurrency landscape, which is, it's really innovative, and it's kind of giving back control of the digital landscape to the people, to the masses, and it's corporations and companies and have exploited the power that the internet provides, and they've monopolised it for their own profit instead of it being the decentralised future which it should be. So when I started getting more and more interested in cryptocurrency and the philosophical implications of it, and it's interesting to look at it, and you can look at it from an economic point of view, whereas that only interests me a wee bit, but what really interests me is the philosophical implications of it and what it actually means for humanity, and the potential of it is phenomenal. And that's why I wanted to start creating work about it, because it almost is kind of, it's hard to understand, and you're getting all these great people and very intelligent people in technology who are really pushing it and really innovating it, whereas it can be quite inaccessible to the average person. And as I said, for me, for example, I can only understand it through analogy, through listening to podcasts and stuff like this, and I can understand it up to a certain point, whereas it gets to the technical side and it's like, I can't. Whereas like, you don't necessarily need to, like, you can use an iPhone without needing to know how it actually works.
That's so true.
And it's the same with the banking system currently. How much do we actually know how it works? And because we don't know how it works, they can then fool us and they can give us the illusion of giving a service which is best for us, when in reality it isn't. When you get to cryptocurrency and you get to blockchain, you can understand through analogy, you can understand what it actually means, and you don't need to understand the underlying technology of it to be able to embrace it, to be able to believe in it, and to be able to benefit from it. So I wanted to really raise an awareness of the potentials of it and try and put it in an environment where you can understand it away from the technological side of it, and you can just understand it through the philosophical side of it as well, and to give people a gateway into maybe exploring it further, or maybe listen to a podcast about it. And it's because it's the world so many people believe in, they don't yet know they believe in it yet.
That kind of links in with your kind of personal interests in meditation and yoga. If you'd have said that to me at the beginning, I wouldn't have said so, but I can see how that kind of democratic nature of these things, of technology, I guess.
Yes.
That really does link into that kind of way of living and those philosophies. Really interesting. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
So I'll just finish up with a few quick questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So the first one is, where would the dream location for one of your paintings hang?
Oh, that's an interesting one. So yeah, I always remembered when I was younger and I first started really getting interested in art, I went down to the Tate Modern and I was like, I want a painting in the Tate. And I was like, and it was just almost like a kind of bigger goal for me, just to kind of have in the back of my mind that's like, you needed some form of bigger goal to work towards. And I would like that, but I said I don't want to just have a painting in a gallery. I like when paintings kind of transcend the gallery and they can be more out in the public sphere as well. So I'd like to, not even necessarily a painting, but more of a sculpture or any form of artwork. I think more having a permanent, public related artwork, so it's more out in the public and not necessarily just in the gallery.
Yeah.
So
also when you say public, you mean that kind of public, not like in people's homes or anything, like really like... Yeah,
so it's democratised and it's just like anyone can really enjoy it from anywhere. And it's
great.
But one thing I really like as well is that I just like people to have the paintings. I do like people to enjoy the paintings. I've got a hard work ethic in the sense I do create quite a lot of paintings just because I love the process of it, and I love to share them with people as well. And I like when people kind of have a personal association with a painting, and I like when somebody resonates with a painting and they've got it in their house and they really enjoy it, and I really like the personal aspect you can bring with a painting. And for me that's the most important part of it. Like, it's whether a painting's in the Tate or anything like that, if somebody gets value from it in their house, then that means a lot to me. I was home at the weekend where I'd seen my great auntie and uncle. It was the first time I'd seen them since the pandemic started, so I was like, at least a year and a half, maybe closer to 2 years. And it was recently I'd sent my painting down and they loved it, and it means so much to them. And they were so excited to even tell me about it and tell me where they put it, and they're showing all their friends and stuff like that when they go in, and the value they've gotten from that is phenomenal. And just to see the joy which they've gotten from it, like, that means a lot to me. And that's the most important part of painting for me, is when you can give people them wee moments of joy, bring that wee bit of beauty into somebody's life. That's
perfect. I love that. So what's your favourite piece in the exhibition?
Well, that's an interesting one. Not really sure. I remember when I was younger, and me and my kids would always, no, me and my brother and my sister, you'd say to her, Mum, Dad's like, who's your favourite? Mum would always go, you are. She would democratise it, and she wouldn't say, so like, regardless of who asked it, it'd be like, it's you. I feel like in a similar situation of like...
you're surrounded by your little babies.
So each one I would say, it's you. So what one I'm looking at is my favourite one at the moment.
That's a beautiful answer. I love that. That means that you obviously care. I love that. So the exhibition title, In the Flesh, does that mean anything to you? Do you resonate with that at all? As a concept?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a perfect name for the name for the exhibition, and it's because it just highlights everything which gets lost when you can see things digitally. Like, when you see things digitally, there's so much value to it. The amount of people I've managed to share my artwork with recently digitally is phenomenal. Like, it's not trying to speak negative of the digital at all, but there's just certain things which you just lack, and there's just certain things you just can't translate with it. And it's the idea of in the flesh. Like, some things you just need to see in person.
You do,
some things, and especially the paintings in this exhibition as well, they're very tactile, and you get a lot from seeing them in the flesh as well. So I said it's perfectly titled, and I think it's the exhibition which I've just really wanted to have as well. Just, I said, in person, very physical, and that's the focus of it as well. Yeah. And especially looking at all the other paintings within it as well, they're all the paintings are different, but the idea of wanting to see the tactileness of them and wanting to see the physicality of that, what seems to be what unites them. And it's like, so they all work really well together, and and it just means a lot of people to see a painting, as I said, in the flesh. And I keep on saying the term in the flesh without it being directly related to the exhibition.
I think that's why I've said that a lot. Yeah. So that's why it had to be the title. Yeah.
It's just that I said the perfect title for it. So it's a great exhibition. You've done a great job curating it.
Thank you, Lewis. That's very kind of you. So the last question is, you kind of suggested, and you can keep this to yourself, but do you have a direction that you want your work to take next? The people have been a recent development in the last year. Is that something you're going to pursue further, or are you going to bring another element in?
I think for the short-term future, it's continue the trajectory I'm already on. I think, especially when we put this start semester 3 of the Masters, and that's when it's really going to start pushing the scale. And this year so far, I've worked on a lot of a smaller scale, and that's so I could experiment a lot more with different compositions and different colour combinations and all of this. So throughout the summer, it's going to be scaling these ideas up and just kind of, have a more focus on them and what worked, what didn't work. And so that's going to be the focus for the short term. In the long term, I've got a few vague ideas, ones which I've not quite started to articulate yet, but there will be direction to go forward. But I'm really going to push the figurative compositions for a while.
Great, perfect. Well, it means a huge amount to be able to ask you these questions, so thank you very much, Lewis.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. That was artist Lewis Deeney with me, Nicola Wiltshire. You can find Lewis's work on his website, lewisdeeney.co.uk, or Instagram @LewisDeeney. If you're interested in my work, my website is nicolawiltshire.com, or I'm Nicola_Wiltshire on Instagram. We are also both represented by New Blood Art, so check their website for regular new paintings. I'll be chatting to the other In the Flesh artists over the coming weeks, so stay tuned for the next episode. Have a lovely day and chat soon.